70 meters down in the Gulf of Thailand, a British diver's sonar screen flickers with a shape that shouldn't be there. It's 230 feet of American steel lying upright on the seabed, a Palau-class submarine that vanished without a trace in May 1945. The war had been over for months when families back home finally stopped waiting for letters that would never come. But as the camera sweeps across the hull, something stops the dive team cold. The wreck is intact. Impossibly intact. The conning tower stands upright. The hull shows no sign of catastrophic failure for a submarine that disappeared in combat 60 years ago. It looks like it sank yesterday. 86 men went down with this submarine. The Navy called it presumed lost. Bureaucratic language for a boat that simply disappeared. No distress call. No final transmission. No witnesses. Just a name added to a list and a patrol that never came home. The wreck tells a different story, one written in steel and silence. This is the USS Lagarto, and 60 years after she disappeared. The evidence resting on the seabed raises a question no one expected. What really happened in those final moments? In May 2005, private wreck diver Jamie McLeod and his team were scanning a remote section of the Gulf of Thailand when side-scan sonar revealed an intact submarine resting at approximately 70 meters. In waters that had swallowed the evidence of war and kept it hidden for 6 decades. The sonar image showed a vessel lying upright on the continental shelf, its silhouette unmistakable. Conning tower, dive planes, hull tapering toward bow and stern. McLeod, a British technical diver with years of experience hunting what-we wrecks across Southeast Asia, knew what he was looking at before the first diver touched bottom. The wreck sat at a depth accessible to experienced mixed gas divers. Not the crushing abyss that claimed so many other submarines, but deep enough that currents, sediment, and time had kept it hidden from fishing boats and commercial traffic. When the dive team descended, they found a submarine preserved in remarkable condition. The hull was intact, resting level on the seabed with no sign of the catastrophic breakup that typically follows a deep-depth implosion. Warm tropical water and moderate currents had created ideal preservation conditions. Visibility hovered around 15 to 20 meters on good days, enough to capture video of the conning tower still reaching upward. Periscope shears intact, deck fittings visible beneath a thick carpet of coral and marine growth. The hull showed no visible battle scars from gunfire, no evidence of collision, no massive structural failures. The submarine appeared whole, a ghost ship resting peacefully on the bottom, slowly being claimed by the reef that had grown over its steel skin. McLeod's team photographed the wreck from every angle, documenting hull numbers, structural features, and the telltale configuration of a Palau-class fleet submarine. They cross-referenced the images with declassified U.S. Navy records, and by 2006, the Naval History and Heritage Command made it official. This was USS Lagarto, SS-371, lost on her second war patrol with all hands. 86 men, no survivors, no rescue, just silence that had lasted 60 years. The condition of the wreck stunned experts. Submarines lost in combat typically show evidence of chaos. Debris fields, scattered wreckage, signs of rapid structural failure. Lagarto looked controlled, upright, intact, dignified. The conning tower stood tall. The propellers showed no damage. The boat looked as if it had simply settled to the bottom and stayed there, waiting for the families of the 86 lost crew, men who had spent 60 years with nothing but a telegram and a presumed date of loss. The discovery was seismic. These were fathers, brothers, husbands, and sons from across the United States, farm towns in the Midwest, factory cities in the Northeast, small communities scattered from coast to coast. Some traveled to meet McLeod's team. Others watched the dive footage in silence, seeing for the first time the place where their loved ones had spent the last 6 decades. The U.S. Navy issued statements honoring the boat and crew, and the site was immediately designated a war grave under military and international maritime law. No salvage, no artifact recovery. The wreck would remain untouched, a steel tomb under foreign waters, protected by treaty and respect. But for historians and submarine warfare experts, the discovery raised as many questions as it answered. Here was a WW-2 fleet boat, frozen at the moment of loss, with physical evidence that could be analyzed and compared against archival records. And those records, American and Japanese, told a story the wreck couldn't fully confirm or deny, because the condition of Lagarto suggested something unexpected. This wasn't a submarine that had been blown apart or crushed. This was a boat that had died quietly, and the question was why. Lagarto's second war patrol began in late April 1945, part of the U.S. Navy's final push to strangle Japan's ability to move troops, fuel, and supplies across the Pacific. Her orders placed her in the South China Sea and Gulf of Thailand, high-stakes Wolfpack territory, where American submarines were bleeding the Japanese empire dry, one convoy at a time. Built in 1944 by Manitowoc Shipbuilding Company in landlocked Wisconsin, Lagarto was a Belau-class submarine, one of the war's most effective designs. She was 301 feet long, displaced, 2,400 tons submerged, and could dive to 400 feet, deeper than her predecessors. Her pressure hull was thicker, her ballast systems more refined, and her firepower devastating. 10 torpedo tubes, 6 forward and 4 aft, loaded with Miki 14 torpedoes that, despite ongoing reliability issues, had become more dependable than the disaster they'd been earlier in the war. Lagarto had completed her first war patrol successfully, returning to base with a confirmed kill. Her second patrol launched with a seasoned crew, a captain who understood the rhythms of submarine warfare, and orders to operate under strict radio silence unless contact with high-value targets justified breaking it. The patrol zone included waters near the Malay Peninsula and the Gulf of Thailand, exactly where she was supposed to be. In early May 1945, Lagarto was coordinating with another American submarine, USS Baya, hunting a Japanese convoy. Intelligence had identified targets moving through the Gulf of Thailand, escorted by the Japanese mine layer Hatsutaka, a vessel equipped with sonar and depth charges, tasked with protecting shipping lanes and hunting Allied submarines. Then, on May 3 or 4, 1945, records differ slightly on the exact date, Lagarto disappeared. No distress call, no emergency transmission. The submarine simply failed to return to her next scheduled radio check. Days passed, then weeks. By late May, the Navy listed her as overdue and presumed lost. The official cause? Unknown. The official location? Somewhere in her patrol area. The official explanation? None. But in the chaos of post-war reconciliation, a different story emerged. Japanese records, declassified decades later, described an anti-submarine engagement on May 3, 1945, in the Gulf of Thailand. The mine layer Hatsutaka reported detecting a submerged contact in approximately 30 fathoms, about 180 feet of water, and attacking with depth charges. The report noted an oil slick, debris and bubbles rising to the surface, the classic signature of a submarine kill. The Japanese logged the engagement and moved on. The U.S. Navy, with no corresponding patrol report from Lagarto, had no record of the encounter. For 60 years, these two accounts existed in parallel. The American record of a submarine lost without explanation, and the Japanese record of a successful ASW attack with no identified victim. The wreck connected them. The wreck confirms what the Japanese claimed and what the U.S. Navy never knew. Lagarto died on May 3rd or 4th, 1945, in the Gulf of Thailand, almost certainly at the hands of Hatsutaka's depth charges. But the wreck's intact condition creates a puzzle. Depth charges don't need to score a direct hit to kill a submarine. A close detonation creates a pressure wave that can crush hull plates, buckle frames, and flood compartments in seconds. Yet Lagarto shows none of the catastrophic damage typically associated with depth charge kills. No massive ruptures, no hull sections blown apart, no debris field. This suggests one of two scenarios. Either the depth charges damage critical systems, ballast tanks, diving planes, electrical systems, without breaching the pressure hull, causing Lagarto to lose control and sink beyond crush depth. Or the explosions opened smaller breaches that flooded the boat slowly enough for it to settle to the bottom intact, but too fast for the crew to surface or blow ballast. Either way, the crew would have known what was happening. The sound of depth charges detonating nearby, a hammer blow transmitted through steel and water, would have been unmistakable. Then the indicators: loss of depth control, flooding alarms, increasing down angle. Men would have responded with emergency procedures: seal watertight doors, blow ballast tanks, try to regain trim. But if the damage was severe enough, if critical systems failed, there would have been nothing they could do. The boat would have sunk, nose first or level, settling onto the seabed at 225 feet, deeper than the 180 feet where Hatsutaka reported the attack, suggesting Lagarto drifted or descended after the initial engagement. And there's a final detail, confirmed months later. On August 16, 1945, the day after Japan surrendered, the American submarine USS Hawkbill sank Hatsutaka with torpedoes. The crew of Hawkbill had no idea they'd just avenged Lagarto. The connection wasn't made until decades later, when Japanese records were matched to American losses. But one question remained unanswered. What exactly killed Lagarto? The wreck was too intact to tell the full story. The wreck of USS Lagarto lies as it sank, upright, dignified, and largely whole. And that condition is both the wreck's greatest mystery and its most haunting feature. Submarines killed by depth charges typically show visible damage, ruptured hulls, collapsed sections, debris scattered across the seabed. Lagarto shows none of that. The hull appears structurally sound. The conning tower stands intact. The propellers and rudder are undamaged. From the outside, the boat looks like it could have simply settled to the bottom under power and stayed there. But the lack of visible catastrophic damage doesn't mean the boat survived the attack unharmed. Depth charges kill in multiple ways. The pressure wave from a close detonation can buckle internal frames, shatter gauge glass, rupture piping, and disable electrical systems without leaving obvious external scars. A breach too small to see from the outside can flood a compartment in minutes. Damage to ballast tanks or diving planes can make it impossible to surface, even if the pressure hull remains intact. What divers observed was a submarine preserved in remarkable condition, draped in coral and marine growth, its structure integrated into the reef ecosystem. But the details of what lies inside, the compartments, the machinery, the evidence of how the crew fought to save the boat, remain sealed behind steel that law and respect have placed out of reach. No one has entered the wreck. No one has surveyed the interior. No artifacts have been recovered. The submarine rests as a war grave, protected by U.S. and international law, and all analysis is based on external observation in comparison to historical records. What can be inferred is limited but telling. The wreck's upright position suggests it sank in a controlled manner, not tumbling or breaking apart. The intact structure suggests the pressure hull wasn't catastrophically breached, but the fact that Lagarto never surfaced, never sent a distress call, never made it home, tells the other half of the story. Whatever damage Hatsutaka inflicted was fatal, and it happened fast. The crew would have had seconds to minutes to respond. In that time, they would have tried everything: blow ballast, seal compartments, reverse engines, surface at emergency speed. But if flooding was too severe, if ballast systems failed, if the boat lost power or control, there would have been no escape. The submarine would have descended past its design depth, past the point where the hull could resist pressure and settled onto the seabed. Or, more likely, the boat sank at a controlled rate, damaged but not destroyed, and came to rest at 225 feet, just beyond the depth where Hatsutaka reported the attack. The crew may have survived the initial sinking, trapped inside a hull that was intact but flooded, waiting in darkness as oxygen ran out. The wreck doesn't answer these questions. It only raises them. And the most haunting question of all: what were Lagarto's final moments like for the 86 men inside? The wreck of USS Lagarto has become more than a historical artifact. It's a war grave, a legal monument, an ecological habitat, and a reminder of the 52 American submarines and 3,505 submariners lost in World War II. Under U.S. law and international maritime agreements, including the 2001 UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage, the wreck is classified as a military burial site. The designation carries legal weight: no salvage operations, no artifact recovery, no disturbance of human remains. The U.S. Navy's Naval History and Heritage Command issued explicit guidance that the site must be treated with dignity, honor, and respect. Only non-invasive documentation, video surveys, external photography, sonar mapping is permitted, and even that requires coordination with U.S. authorities. This protection has preserved the wreck in remarkable condition. Divers who visited the site describe it as a time capsule, the hull draped in coral and sponges, the conning tower colonized by schools of fish, the metal slowly integrating into the reef ecosystem. The Gulf of Thailand's warm, relatively shallow waters have accelerated biological growth, turning Lagarto into an artificial reef that supports marine life. A strange, unintended legacy for a machine built to destroy. For the families of the 86 lost crew, the discovery brought a mix of closure and renewed grief. These were men from across the United States, volunteers for submarine duty, one of the most dangerous assignments in the U.S. Navy. Of the 288 submarines that served in Waipu, 52 were lost, the highest loss rate of any American military branch. Lagarto's crew had no idea they were among the last. The war in Europe had ended on May 8, 1945, just days after Lagarto sank. Japan would surrender in August. These men died in a war that was, unbeknownst to them, nearly over. Families who learned of the wreck's discovery in 2005 and 2006 experienced it as both gift and wound. Some traveled to see the dive footage, hours of video showing the boat resting peacefully on the seafloor, intact and dignified. Others found it too painful, preferring to remember their loved ones as they were. The Navy facilitated virtual visits, sharing documentation and imagery, while maintaining the site's protection. No bodies have been recovered. None will be. The boat is their monument. For historians and submarine warfare experts, the wreck is invaluable, not for what can be recovered, but for what it represents. Sealed compartments likely contain artifacts that could answer decades-old questions, bridge logs that might record the final target, communication equipment that could reveal last transmissions, personal effects that humanize the crew beyond their service records. But access is limited, and rightly so. The wreck is not a museum, it's a grave. What Lagarto reveals, even in her silence, is the brutal arithmetic of submarine warfare. These boats operated alone, hundreds of miles from support, in waters controlled by the enemy. They relied on stealth, speed, and the hope that intelligence was accurate and that their weapons would work. When something went wrong, a depth charge, a malfunction, a miscalculation, there was no backup, no rescue, no second chance. What Lagarto hides is harder to quantify. Inside those sealed compartments are the answers to questions the Navy never fully resolved. Did the crew have time to react? Were there survivors in sealed compartments as the boat sank? What were the final moments like for the men who knew they weren't going home? The intact condition of the wreck suggests the crew may have had time to respond, to seal compartments, to fight for survival. But the fact that Lagarto never surfaced tells the rest of the story. There's a phrase submariners use, still on patrol. It's how the Navy refers to lost boats and crews. Not dead, not gone, but still out there, still on mission. Lagarto is still on patrol. The Gulf of Thailand is her station. 70 meters is her depth, and every year, the coral grows a little thicker, the fish schools a little larger, the steel a little weaker. But 70 meters down, behind sealed steel and 60 years of silence, the questions remain. How did the crew respond? Did they know what hit them? How long did they have? The wreck holds the answers. Locked in compartments no one will ever open, preserved in a tomb that law and respect have placed forever out of reach. The Gulf of Thailand keeps its secrets. The submarine rests intact. And somewhere in the dark, the last moments of USS Lagarto wait, witnessed only by steel, salt water, and the 86 men who never came home. But one question never made it into the Navy's files. What did Lagarto's crew experience when Hatsutaka's depth charges fell?